In the late 1980s and the early 1990s, Johnny Depp and Winona Ryder weren't just a couple, they were the couple. He was the rising Hollywood rebel best known for 21 Jump Street and soon after on Edward Scissorhands, and she was the teenage starlet of Heathers and Beetlejuice, already a cultural darling with her dark, quirky style, and together they seemed to capture the very essence of youthful cool. Their relationship was more than just a romance, it was iconic. The image of Johnny with Winona forever tattooed on his arm became one of the most famous symbols of celebrity love in the early 90s. They were photographed everywhere, inspiring fans with their mix of grunge edge and classic Hollywood glamour. Even now, decades later, people look back at Depp and Ryder as one of the most legendary Hollywood pairings of that era. While the world saw a fairy tale, there's another side we need to talk about. When they started dating in 1989, Winona Ryder was just 17 years old and Johnny Depp was 26. That's not just a small difference in age, it's a gap in life stage. Winona was still a teenager and not yet an adult by legal standards in California, while Johnny was already in his mid-20s with nearly a decade of adult experience behind him. At the time, the press didn't raise many questions. Hollywood often romanticized relationships with big age gaps, especially involving younger women and older men. But through today's lens, it's important to reflect on what they really meant. A 17-year-old is still finding her identity while a 26-year-old has much more power, independence, and maturity. The imbalance in experience and decision-making raises valid concerns about how healthy that dynamic could be. And this doesn't erase the fact that they were beloved or that their relationship made a huge cultural impact. To this day, fans still reference them as both Depp and Ryder have spoken about how deep and meaningful their connection was. But looking back, it also highlights how society once normalized things that today would be questioned more critically. It shows how far conversation about age, consent, and power in relationships have come, and how important it is to recognize both the glamour and the uncomfortable truths behind Hollywood love stories.
I'm going to ask you this, tattoos.
Yes.
3 tattoos. Yes. Betty Sue, for whom?
Betty Sue's my mom.
Yeah, an Indian, for what?
The Indian was the first tattoo I ever got. I was about 17, 18. Just having to do with part of my heritage. There goes that large insect.
And you've got Winona Forever. I presume that's Winona Ryder. Is that one still there?
Good guess. No. It's no longer there. We've split up.
You had the tattoo taken off?
No, of course not. I think these things to me, these tattoos, for me are a journal, and as opposed to writing it on a piece of paper, I just took the initiative and put it on skin, so I wear my journal. But even though we're not together anymore, it doesn't take away the honesty of the moment of when I got the tattoo, and it doesn't...
So, you don't look in the mirror and feel any regrets about having got it in the light of your current situation?
Not. I don't regret the tattoo at all. In fact, it's a part of my past, it's part of my history, and I would definitely keep it. I could add things to it. I could subtract. I could make it wino forever, for instance.
And here's why that matters. In California, where they live, the age of consent was and still is 18 years old. Legally speaking, a 17-year-old is a minor. A relationship between a 17-year-old and a 26-year-old exists in a gray, if not outright problematic, area. By the law, she wasn't considered fully capable of consenting to a relationship with an adult man in his mid-20s. Yet in Hollywood, the pairing was not only accepted, but it was celebrated. And this brings up an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes we selectively excuse or ignore behavior when it involves celebrities we admire. Had this been two unknown people, or had the man not been Johnny Depp, a rising star adored by fans, there might have been outrage, or at least serious concern. But because it was Depp and Ryder, people cheered them on, wrote glowing magazine features, and romanticized their relationship. And this is what we can call selective favoritism. Society applies one set of standards to people in everyday life and a completely different set to celebrities. Even if a 26-year-old man dates a 17-year-old girl in a normal town, people might raise red flags or even call the police. But when it happens in Hollywood, it becomes a fairy tale because we like the actors, because we're invested in their movies, and because the press packages as glamorous. It's not unique to Depp and Ryder either. Throughout Hollywood history, we've seen countless examples of older men dating teenage girls, and rather than criticism, it often got spun as romantic. Elvis Presley dated Priscilla when she was just 14, and Jerry Seinfeld famously dated a 17-year-old when he was nearly 40. Time and again, the rules seem to bend for stars.
Girlfriends, all they talk about is going to science class. A girlfriend's life revolves around home. They got homework, homeroom, and they want to run away from home and live with their 38-year-old celebrity boyfriend.
The problem is that this selective favoritism normalizes relationship with troubling power imbalances. A teenager like Winona Ryder at 17 was still developing her identity, her independence, and her understanding of the world. And Johnny Depp at 26 was already an adult with more life experience and control, and that gap in maturity and power matters. Yet the media rarely asked whether Winona was too young. Instead, they focused on how in love the couple seemed, because it was easier to sell romance than to confront uncomfortable realities. Looking back now, through the lens of 2025, we can see it differently. We live in a time where conversation about consent, power, and exploitation are far more front and center. A 26-year-old dating a 17-year-old would not be praised today. In fact, it would almost certainly spark public backlash and legal scrutiny. But back then, selective favoritism shielded them. Fans wanted the love story, not the criticism, and so the narrative of Hollywood's perfect couple was allowed to flourish.
But studies show that girls are particularly vulnerable at 18 and 19. So listen now to a celebrated actress who has just made a new movie called Girl Interrupted.
Outdoor magazine stand, and I saw myself on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine, and it said something like, Winona Ryder, the luckiest girl in the world. And it broke my heart, because there I was, you know, in so much pain, and feeling so confused, feeling so lost in my life. I wasn't allowed to complain because I was so lucky, you know, and I was so blessed, and I made a lot of money, and, you know, my problems weren't real problems, and if I'm as nauseated as the next person when actors complain about their lives. You know, we are blessed, we are lucky, but the stuff that I was going through was difficult.
This doesn't erase the fact that Johnny and Winona truly care for each other. By all accounts, their relationship was intense and meaningful for both of them, but it does remind us how easily society can overlook issues when it involves people we admire. We create exceptions to the rule because of their fame, their beauty, or the characters they played on screen. So what's the lesson here? Is that celebrity favoritism distorts our sense of right and wrong. We forgive, excuse, or even celebrate situations that in a non-celebrity context would make us deeply uncomfortable. And in doing so, we risk sending the message that laws and ethics don't apply to the famous in the same way they do to everyone else. And Johnny and Winona Ryder's romance will always be remembered as iconic. But it's also a reminder that we must look beyond the glossy surface of Hollywood love stories and ask harder questions, because sometimes the things we accept because they look glamorous on the cover of the magazines of things we would never accept in our own life.
Ryder. Have you ever spoken to Winona, especially in light of her recent controversies?
No, I haven't talked to Winona for a while, and oh, I don't know. You know that? I mean, the way they dragged her through the, I would say mud, but in fact it was like broken glass.
It must be hard, though, to see somebody you basically care about go through a difficult time like that.
Yeah, but I mean, she's a good kid. You know, she's also a very strong spirit. She'll make her way through it.